Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pot Smoker's Bible. This is DLM Druggies Lives Matter, my companion piece to the Black Lives Matter movement, where I point out the fact that most of the black people who are being brutalized by the police are being brutalized by the police because they're not only black, but because they do drugs. And it is also my way to point out the fact that it's not just black people who are being brutalized by the police. This little problem right here is compliments of York City Jail and their nurses' desire to deprive me of my medication. So, black people are not the only ones who are being brutalized by the police. And it is my belief that it is the war on drugs itself that has given the police license to kill. It is the mentality of the war on drugs culture that has created the necessary conditions for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor to be killed, and for the Black Lives Matter movement matters, Black Lives Matter movement to take hold from Ferguson on, because the majority, not all, but the majority of the people killed and brutalized by the police are drug related, as well as race related and economic related. The reason why I'm looking like this is because I'm a poor white trailer trash bitch. I'm poor and I'm white. I'm single and I'm female. I do drugs. And I'm at the top end of the who's least likely to be brutalized by the police, but I'm still brutalized. But here is the evidence. I live with it every day. So and this, I guess, is my reason for saying, hey, let's talk about the war on drugs, because it was the proliferation of the war on drugs that led to the police brutality that we know of today, because it is the mentality of the drug user as a criminal culture that gave rise to the increase in police tactics, the specialized units working on drug culture related, the nets that they set, their traps. The whole, everything that leads to the brutality of the police as we know it today stems directly from the war on drugs, in addition to the Jim Crow type black suppression. I am not in any way, shape, or form taking away from the black people in this. I'm just saying, hey, others have also suffered at the hands of the police. And our main gripe is the war on drugs. Now, today I want to talk about one of the ramifications of the war on drugs, and that is the destruction of the family as we know it, as we knew it. Because, okay, in the 1950s, the divorce rate was practically non-existent. By the 70s, it had become a breakthrough barrier thing where more and more people were getting divorced. And this whole breakdown of the family, I believe, started with the prohibition of marijuana and the propaganda that led to the cultural belief that if you do drugs, you're a maniacal criminal. Because it made the parents afraid of their children. So the parents turned on the children. When a child was found to do drugs, the parent, it's like a switch was flipped. One day your parents love you and honor you and believe in you. Then they find out that you do drugs. And now they don't trust you. They don't believe in you. They're trying everything that they can do to change you. They no longer recognize you as their child. You're a stranger to them, a criminal. And so the family cohesion was done away with. It was no longer, they're my son, I love them no matter what. Now that's rare. Now it's like, my child does drugs, take him and lock him up. You need to go to rehab. We have to have an intervention because you do drugs. It's like drugs. A parent, lovey, drugs, hate. That's what the war on drugs has done to the family unit. By the 60s, the people who were using drugs were fed up. They were like, fuck you. You don't have the right to hate us for who we are. We are loving, decent people. Let us show you. So we got the hippies, the flower children of the 60s, the love, free love. Beautiful. God, so beautiful people. But what did the parents see? Dirty, scummy, street drug user culture people who are like criminals. So literally, you go from, I'm your daughter, I'm your mom, I love you, I love you, I love you. You're a drug user, you're a criminal, I hate you, everything you do is wrong, you need to stop doing drugs, you need to go to rehab, you need to go to prison, you need to stop being who you are because you're no longer my child. Why? Because the United States of America decided, the government decided one day in 1939 to sign a piece of paper making marijuana illegal. And then they signed a piece of paper making other things illegal. And from that moment on, every mother and every father that ever found out that their child did drugs turned on their children. Just blatantly turned on them. The child was still the same child. They didn't change. The only thing that changed was their awareness of the universe. Because that's what drugs does. So your child turns on to everything, and you turn on your child. And then it's like in the 50s, nobody got divorced. By the 70s, people were getting divorced. And now divorce is fucking common. The destruction of the family unit. It's like we have parents taking their children away from their children. Taking their grandchildren away from their children, raising them on their own because my kid does drugs, so we have to take the children and brainwash them against the parents because we're their grandparents and we know better because they're drug users, they're criminals, they don't deserve children. So we're going to spy on them, we're going to find them doing something wrong, we're going to take those children, and if we can't have them, we're going to give them to strangers because we would rather have there are grandchildren in the hands of strangers than in the hands of our children who are no longer our children because they do drugs. And now, because everybody turned on everybody because of drug use, and because the men in the 60s got used to the fact that they could fuck all the women they wanted and not having a problem with it. And they didn't feel like they had to take responsibility for anything. Because after all, they were just criminals. So the children of the 60s love fests were kind of left without fathers. And that has proliferated to this day where no man feels that he has a responsibility to stay with a woman because of the child. Which was a stupid idea to begin with, but the stupidest idea was having the child without the love, respect, and ties that bind. the family ties that we've lost because the government decided that drugs make criminals out of children and that parents should hate their children because their children do drugs. So that they need to drag their victimized, traumatized child onto shows like Oprah Winfrey so that they can scream maniacally at him, "How dare you do drugs? But Mom, how dare you destroy my life with your drugs? Mom, don't you understand? Listen to me. I'm not going to listen to you. Use drugs. Drugs make you evil." Well, you know what? You're the evil bitch, Mom. Because you turned on your child. Because your child turned to drugs. Because you were too busy making money. So you glorify money. You destroy the family. You victimize the child. And then they have children. Those children go to school. And then the school teaches those children to turn on their parents and turn their parents in so that they can be taken away from their parents and given to either redneck grandparents or total fucking strangers, to be brainwashed against their own flesh and blood parents. There's no family cohesion in America because the family unit has been destroyed by the war on drugs. And it is the destruction of the family unit that allowed the police to become so fucking brutal. Because the men got brutal as a result of this. Don't ask me why men think they have the right to beat the fuck out of women, but that's pretty damn common. Why? Because of the frustration of the war on drugs. I have no one else to beat up because I get the fuck beat out of me by the cops every time I go down the street, so I'm gonna beat my wife and my kids. The destruction of the family unit by the war on drugs is the worst sin America ever committed. And as far as I'm concerned, America can go fuck itself. Because I love my people. If you do drugs, you have someone who loves you dearly. Me. If your mom doesn't want to love you because you do drugs, I'll be your mom. I'm 58 years old, and I don't care if you're 79. I'll still be your mom. Because I love you as a mother would love any child. Freely, without reservation, and without government tampering. The government does not have the right to tell you how to judge your child. And just because your child does drugs does not mean they're a bad person. Chances are, if they're doing drugs, it's because you were too much of an asshole to address their needs. So they turn to the drugs instead. So if you have a child that does drugs, you drove them to it. Because you either neglected them or you abused them in some nature. So, if you think you have the right to judge your child based on the war on drugs, you don't. And if you cannot love your children as they are with their drug use, you don't deserve them. You don't have the right to have an intervention because your child does drugs. If your child has a drug problem, you created that drug problem because you gave birth to them and you turned on them. So why don't you fix the family that you broke? End the war on drugs. That's a good place to start. So, druggies' lives do matter. They always have, and they always will. The United States of America and our parents do not have the right to judge us based solely on our use of drugs. Grow up. Get a life. My name is Zion. If you do drugs, stay happy and high. You have every right and reason to. Believe me, I know. I wrote 2 books about them, The Pot Smoker's Bible and The Book of Zion. Look me up. Love you too much to say goodbye. Some must say later now.